What's going on, everybody? Cabana Greg here, and today we're going to be ranking all of the games that I've played in 2025 so far. Just a quick note, you're going to see a lot of games that aren't games released this year. You're going to see games from a couple years back at this point, mainly because I've been trying to go through my backlog in 2025, really just going through things that I've bought, haven't had a chance to play, so that I can try out new games as they release. And so I'm really just kind of going through my backlog. So again, you're going to see games on here from 2024, 2023, even games from like 2009, older stuff too. So I think there's a good variety in here. Just wanted to make that note in case you're expecting things like the new Indiana Jones or Claire Obscura to be on this list. They're not, because I haven't had a chance to play them, at least not yet. So without further ado, let's actually hop right into it. But let's break down the tiers this time around. We've got at the bottom here, skip it. I think it's pretty straightforward. You know, it's just not worth your time. There aren't too many redeeming qualities about the game. Not worth your time. Just skip it at this point. There's too many games to play. This one's not, it's not worth your time. Then we've got meh, slightly above that one. They're just, games that are not very good. They are just kind of middle of the road. They're not the most offensive things in the world. They're just not good. They're just not good. Next up here, we've got good. Pretty straightforward. It's a good game. Middle of the road. Totally fine. Nothing wrong with that game or games that end up in that tier. We've got very good above that. Really impressive games. Things that I liked, more than most other games that I played recently. Just really solid, really strong games that are worth a look for sure. Then at the very top, you've got the must play category. Games you should absolutely check out for one reason or another. Absolutely worth your time. Must check it out. And if you also have a backlog of games like me, maybe just consider adding these games to your backlog as well. Let's start off with the most recent game that I finished in 2025. I actually finished this game a couple days ago, and so we're going to be talking about Stray Gods, and this one's pretty difficult for me. I think the voice cast is excellent for the most part. I think there are maybe one or two characters I didn't really love the voice performances for, and the music. Here's the thing about this Stray Gods game: it's a role-playing musical, so you have musical in the title. Right, so the music, you would think the music's going to be the strongest component of the game, right? It's a musical, right? Or part of it's based in music. And unfortunately, I don't think all of the songs hit very well. And this is coming from someone who likes musicals. I am a big musicals fan. I've seen a lot of Broadway shows in my time. I do love and respect, that specific art form. And so, honestly, for me, this is just going to go right in the good tier. This one was hard because I wanted to like this game a lot, and ultimately, I think there are some really well done aspects of this game. First of all, the voice performances, again, for the most part, are really strong. I actually quite enjoyed the writing of this game, and the lore, the world building of the game was very interesting to me as well. And so from that perspective, I think that the designers and the writers did a fantastic job. What I didn't love so much were the musical numbers, which is upsetting because it's a role-playing musical game where basically you have these different choices, these different dialogue choices, and based on a selection that you make, it will shape and morph the current musical number that is being performed. So if you maybe make a selection that's more aggressive, the tempo and the beat of the song becomes a bit more percussive, a bit more intense. Whereas if you maybe make a selection that's more charming or less intense, then the musical the arrangement of instruments changes based on your selections that you're making. So it's a pretty cool concept, and I think from a game design standpoint, it's very smart. And I'm curious to know exactly how the designers and the developers ended up, building something like this, because it's a very cool idea for a game. But ultimately, I didn't really think the songs were catchy enough for me to kind of just latch onto. There are maybe one or two that I really liked, but overall, they were fine. So yeah, for me personally, I think this is a good game. It's not bad. It just has some issues that I'm a little upset that the game has the issues in the first place, but it's still, again, it's a good game. I just wish that it was a little bit better in terms of the aspects that they're really pushing on for this game to be this role-playing musical. I wish the musical numbers were a little bit better. Some of the voice acting, hit or miss for me. Not necessarily, the biggest issue in the world. But I think the other problem I had with this game was there were parts where I just kind of wasn't as into it as I had hoped. There's some really strong sequences. There's some really awesome world building moments that pulled me back into the story. But overall, you know, it's kind of like an ebb and flow sort of experience for me. So that's Stray Gods. I'd still recommend it if you have any sort of interest in what I described to you. Next here is going to be Patapon. Now this, I actually just did a post-platinum review of Patapon. I went ahead and got the platinum trophy for this game. Really awesome stuff. Haven't played it since, you know, it came out on the PSP way back in the day. For me, now this might be controversial, and I'll explain why it's going into this tier here. This belongs, I think, for me, in very good. Now, the reason is not because I don't think Patapon is a great, fantastic game. I actually think replaying Patapon this year made me realize how excellent the game is overall from a design standpoint, gameplay standpoint. Like, it is a very cohesive experience that, in my opinion, is very satisfying to play. The reason I'm not putting it in must play is because I honestly think Patapon 2 is a far superior game. If let's say like if I had played Patapon 2 this year, which honestly I might play it the back half of this year, but if Patapon and Patapon 2 were in this tier list right now, I probably would have stuck Patapon 2 into the must play category, and Patapon would be in this very good category still. Again, Patapon 2 is a further evolution on top of the very solid foundational framework that was set for the first Patapon. And if you have any interest in trying out Patapon, or maybe you want to go ahead and platinum the game or see what that would entail, if you know you're interested in platinuming Patapon, I have a video on the channel for that as well, so you can go ahead and maybe check that out after this one or whatever. But I still think Patapon is a fantastic game. But again, for me, if Patapon 2 was on this list, it would go into must play over the first Patapon. And so that's kind of why I don't feel like putting it in the must play section here, because I know there's already an even better version of this formula that was created, which is, you know, Patapon 2. But this, you know, Patapon's one of those reminders where I really miss the era of games that Patapon came out around. I wish there were more games like this nowadays, where studios were making these weird, quirky experiences that are, you know, both very fun to play and very, you know, engaging. So I don't know. Patapon is excellent. 100% should, you know, you should totally check it out for sure. But again, the only reason it's not going into this must-play category is because I played Patapon 2, and it is a much better game in my opinion. And so that's the only reason why it is here. But if you haven't tried it out, please play it. It's really good. And we've got the 1 and 2 remasters coming out later on this year, so even more of a reason to check them out. Next is the game that I recently replayed to get the Platinum Trophy for. This is Fear the Spotlight. This is Blumhouse's first game that they published, and this for me goes into must play. Now, there's another game that I played and finished this year that is also similar in terms of its DNA, its overall makeup, what the game is, I guess you could say. It'll also show, it'll be on the must play list later on as well, just as a fair warning. But Fear the Spotlight was a big surprise for myself. I really enjoyed the central story, and I love the overall aesthetic of the game. This was only done, I think, by like 2 developers, so incredibly impressive in the first place that these 2 developers were able to make something as good as Fear the Spotlight that really harkens back to these old school survival horror games in terms of the aesthetic, in terms of the mixture of horror and puzzle solving elements. And the best thing I think for me was the puzzles in this game. They all kind of fit back into the world of the game, the narrative and the lore and the story of the game. Like, the puzzles weren't just erroneous puzzles that were thrown in, like something like Myst, right? Like, here's a puzzle. Doesn't really tie back into maybe the world or the central story, so to speak. But Fear the Spotlight, I think everything is cohesion enough. Sorry, what am I trying to say? I think it just fits nicely with everything else in the game. The puzzles are just there. They make sense. They fit with the characters, narrative moments from the characters' lives that are kind of fleshed out as the game goes on. It's just a very solid time. And I feel like if you have an interest in replaying some of those old school horror games, this kind of scratches that itch. It really does a lot of things well. It was one of those things where I played it for the first time, and I thought it was fine. And then after replaying it to go through and 100% the game, I was like, wow, no, this game is really special. So highly recommend Fear the Spotlight. It is totally worth your time. Please check it out. Okay, next, this year I had bought Schim. I believe that's how you pronounce this. It is a indie, I believe, yeah, it's an indie platforming game, I guess you could say. This might be a hot take. I'm going to stick this into meh. So Schim is a independent game. I believe it was developed in Unity, again, by like a small development team, I believe in the UK. It is a game where you play as the shadow who gets detached from their human, and basically you play as the shadow trying to hop across like these environments into other shadows to get back to your human. And so it's a cool idea. You know, you're playing as a little shadow, bopping around to different pockets of shadows in the world with the ultimate goal of getting back to your human. Like, it's a cool idea. I just didn't really think it was that much fun to play. Conceptually, I liked it. Gameplay wise, it didn't really pull me in. And honestly, I think part of the reason for that is because of the camera system. You know, you're trying to navigate this 3D space, trying to find these different pockets, these different like shadow pockets you have to jump into to continue, you know, traversal throughout the world. But as you shift the camera, you know, there's some of the 3D geometry that gets in the way, and it obscures kind of your vision in terms of like, okay, I can jump to this next thing and then jump over here. Like, there were a couple times for some of the more complex levels, and there are definitely some very complex levels in the game. I found it like I was fighting the camera more than anything else, to be honest. Not necessarily that the game was very challenging. I think this is a very chill game to play, but I just feel like you're fighting the camera in some of those more complicated levels that are in the game. So overall, I think it's meh for me. It is not a bad game. I just didn't really move the needle for me. And so I know some people really love this game. It's just not for me. So that's really the only reason why it's in this meh category, to be honest. So next up here, I want to go ahead and let's talk about Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe. This was something I had never played before. I never played the original. So this was a nice new thing to come into. For me, this is a very good experience. There's really not, I don't really have much more to say than it's just a game that constantly delights. It is funny. It is subversive. It is just a blast. For me, is it a must play? Personally, I don't really think so. It's just not one of those games where I'm going to rush out to go play again immediately. But the time that I spent with the game, I thoroughly enjoyed. It is a lot of fun. It is wacky. It just, you know, it knows how to play with the audience or to play with players, and it's kind of subvert their expectations on just the main narrative, kind of like what you're playing, what's going on. It is a lot of fun in that regard. It is definitely worth your time, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But for me at least, I'm not going to rush out of my way to play Stanley Parable like I would for the Spotlight. Granted, they're very different games by nature, but I think personal preference here kind of plays a big part of this, right? But overall, Stanley Parable is 100% worth your time. I would say if you have not played it at all, I believe it's still on PlayStation Plus, or it was a free game on PlayStation Plus a number of months ago. So if you have it downloaded on your machine already, go ahead and check it out. It is a lot of fun. I guarantee you're going to have a good time with it no matter what. Okay, next year we're going to go Curse to Golf. This one is a weird one. I'm actually going to stick this one in good. Curse to Golf is one of those games where I originally had planned on playing it back in 2024. One of those things where it ended up on my backlog, and eventually, I don't know what it was, one night I just saw it in my library. I was like, you know what, I'm going to try it out. So I downloaded it onto my PS5, and I sat with it for maybe 5 or 6 hours straight, and I ended up beating the game not one sitting, but in one day, basically, which I know is very rare, because I saw a lot of people online saying they had a lot of frustrations with the game, which I totally agree with, by the way. I'm not saying it's not a perfect game, but it you know, I had a good time with it. And you know, this is a roguelike golfing game, so you know, you kind of hear like roguelike, there's some RNG mechanics, right? Like you kind of get these random modifiers that kind of change how you play the game. I personally, what ended up happening was I got very lucky. I got 3 very good modifiers that made the game way easier than it ordinarily is, and I was able to just kind of steamroll through the entire game. And so, yeah, I would say personally, if I didn't have the modifiers that I just kind of got by chance, yeah, I would probably have a lot more issues with this game. But Curse to Golf really is one of those games, in my opinion, where the RNG does make or break the experience. Because I know some people, I was reading some reviews on Steam and some reviews on Reddit, the amount of precision that's needed for a game like this is a lot. So any small move can set you back big time. So again, I think something like this in Blueprints, which Blueprints is a very different game, which is not on this list because I never finished it. I just kind of lost interest in that game, TBH. And I think a big part of that was because of the RNG sort of working against the elements of the game that worked so well. And I think Curse to Golf not necessarily has that issue, but there's some clunkiness that I found with the game. And overall, like in terms of roguelikes that I've played and I've enjoyed, this one sits comfortably like right in the middle it's a good game. It's a good time. It's definitely worth a play, especially since, I think you can get through it more easily than other roguelikes. And again, granted, this is coming from someone who got very lucky and, had some good modifiers to make the golf mechanics easier. But overall, like, I had a good time with it. I'd say if you have any interest, maybe check it out. It really just depends on your personal preference for games and experiences. But for me, I was enjoying my time with it. I ended up platinuming the game again in like one day. So it was a very rare experience, I think, for me to go ahead and pick something up like this and finish it in a day and kind of do everything that I wanted to do in it. Okay, next up here we've got Split Fiction. This is Hazelight Studios' new game. I played this and finished the game with my partner. We did local couch co-op the whole time, and this is easily a must play. Again, much like It Takes Two, the Hazelight's games are just so much fun to play. Now, from a narrative standpoint and a writing standpoint, it's not very good, and I'd argue that Split Fiction's overall narrative and story is far less compelling than something like It Takes Two. I think It Takes Two is still a better constructed game when it comes to the story weaving in with its gameplay mechanics, but Split Fiction is just a lot of fun because the team took the basic formula that they had constructed for It Takes Two and made it even more fun to play, and had some really cool, inventive boss fights that are some of the best moments in games that I've experienced in a long time. It's very, very, very fun, really inventive, and I just love seeing like development teams being able to make these cool experiences and really just having the free reign to be inventive and make their games the way that they want to make them. So Split Fiction's superb. I don't know why they're making a movie of this game, to be honest. Like, why are they making a Split Fiction movie with Sydney Sweeney? I have no idea. But in terms of the game, I think it's a fantastic game. It is an absolute must play. If you can play this game locally with a friend or a partner or a sibling, it's 100% worth your time. And yeah, we had a great time with Split Fiction, 100% worth your time. Okay, so we go from something like Split Fiction, which my partner and I really loved, to Lost Records Bloom and Rage, which my partner and I didn't love. And this one's tricky for me. I kind of want to stick it in good, but I also want to stick it in meh because I just don't think it's it's not very satisfying. I'm going to stick it in meh. I'm just going to stick it in meh. There are a lot of problems I have with this experience. First of all, the biggest thing was why the heck did Don't Nod split this game up into two parts? Two parts that we had to wait 3 or 4 months. Part 1 came out. We had to wait about 3 months until part 2 came out. And that gap, it just killed a lot of the momentum that we had to play part 2. And it set up this unreasonable expectation that if we're waiting all this time, it's got to be an amazing second half. It's going to be crazy, right? And it was just fine. It was totally fine. Honestly, between Lost Records, Bloom and Rage, and Double Exposure, Life is Strange, Double Exposure, I think we're done. My partner and I are done with the Life is Strange games for a while, or Life is Strange adjacent games. We're just done with them. Double Exposure was a nightmare, really bad experience, and Bloom and Rage was just very underwhelming, and I don't know. I'm glad that we played the game because I do want to be able to have an opinion on it. I do like the Life is Strange games. I've come around to that series. But ultimately, even my partner, who has a pretty open mind when it comes to these types of stories and these types of experiences, even she was like, no, this was not good. So overall, would I say play it or not play? It's right on the line for me. I think if you're a big fan of Life is Strange, it could be worth your time. I don't think it's nearly as horrible as Double Exposure is. But it's just one of those things where if you're expecting a lot out of Bloom and Rage, don't. I think that there were some sequences in the second half of the game that should have sort of been sprinkled throughout the entirety of the game, and the pacing needed to be reworked big time. There's no reason they should have split this game out into 2 parts. They should have just released this game as one complete package from the start, and I do think that splitting the game up into 2 parts significantly hurt the game's chances of doing somewhat well in the game market right now. So those are my thoughts on Bloom and Rage, to be honest. Okay, next I've got Epic Mickey Rebrushed. This one for me, this was a very fun 3D character platforming game. But I had a good time with it. I think it's hard for me because I think Epic Mickey could easily go into very good. The biggest key factors for why I liked Epic Mickey a lot was just how the development team took the source material and adapted that source material in a very interesting and clever way. I thought that the game world that they created was fun dark and spooky at times, but just it was a really well realized world. I liked everything that they did. They took some classic Disney World rides and adopted them into their own like worlds in the game. I thought that was really cool. I liked all of the 2D platforming sequences, which were harkening back to the old animated Mickey and Donald and Goofy animated shorts that they used to create. So if you're a fan of like old school Disney and like the old Mickey, Donald, and Goofy cartoons, I think you'll have a great time with Epic Mickey, because you could tell there was a lot of love and care that was put into just, you know, incorporating all these various elements that you may or may not have seen throughout Mickey's, you know, existence as an icon, and they put it into a fun enough 3D platforming character game. So yeah, I had a great time with it. It's just one of those things where 3D character platforming experiences for me, they have to kind of go above and beyond to kind of reach the very good and must play. Like Astrobot, hands down one of my favorite 3D platformers I played in a while. Even Sackboy: A Big Adventure I liked quite a bit. So I'm a little bit more of a stickler, I think, for 3D platformers. But Epic Mickey, make no mistake, it's good. It's good. It's a good time. I would say check it out. Definitely if you're a fan of Mickey, if you're a fan of the Disney IPs that they have, and just if you enjoy solid 3D platformers, it's definitely worth your time. It's definitely worth your time for sure. Okay, next up here is a game called Slitterhead. This was worked on from the original, I believe it's the original game director of Siren. Siren and Silent Hill and some other title. But it's the original game director, and then we have the composer that worked on things like Silent Hill 2, Silent Hill 2 Remake. So it's a very, very interesting experience with a lot of talent behind it. Unfortunately, I don't really know where I'm going to slot this one. I don't want to slot it into meh because it's tricky. I'm going to slot it into meh. I'm sorry, guys. Here's the thing. When I first booted up Slitterhead, maybe the first 4 hours of the game, I was like, oh, this is a must play. This is like one of the best things I've played in a long time. And then, I don't know, Slitterhead kind of falls victim to I had similar problems to, this is a tricky one, because Slitterhead has some similar issues to like Silent Hill 2 for me, where I think Silent Hill 2 overstays its welcome. It gets too repetitive. It goes on for a little bit longer than it needs to. It overstays its welcome. And Slitterhead's the same thing, but for me, I wasn't really grabbed by the combat. I liked discovering new characters in the game that you could play as and figure out their new combos and gameplay styles. But I really do think this game suffers a bit from being way too long, and I don't know, it did not sit well with me by the end. And personally, again, the first 4 hours of this game, incredible. It has such a great sense of style. It is very unique. And again, the thing is, it grabbed me initially because it has a very concrete sense of its own style and its own way of telling its story, its own way of dispelling information. And so the overall style for me was what drew me in initially. But in terms of the substance of the game, in terms of the gameplay, in terms of all these other aspects to the game, I just think it gets way too needlessly complicated with the story. Even though I thought it was a pretty cool story at times, it just kind of loses its way. There were some characters that I enjoyed, finding out their backstories and just kind of providing more context to who these characters were in their previous life. But I don't know, there's a lot to this game that could have been better. And it pains me to say this because I bought the game when it came out, and I just played it a couple months ago because I wanted to support the team and I wanted to support their efforts with this new studio that they formed. But I just think it could have been better, and it could have been a lot shorter, is my personal opinion. All right, so let's go to the next game here in our list. This is probably the only game you're going to see in this category. I actually did a video on this game because I recently got it as part of my PS5 game collection. I wanted to do a video on this game. That was the intention behind adding it to the collection. This is Unknown 9 Awakening. This is a skip it for me. This probably doesn't come to a surprise. This is probably not surprising to very many of you out there. This was just one of those unfortunate games that I think Bandai Namco put a lot of money and time into making into this transmedia product where there would be comics and TV shows and digital shorts around this unknown universe, this Unknown 9 universe that they were trying to create and make into this big new property, a Star Wars type deal, if you will. Unfortunately, this game is just not that good. It is not horrible. I will say this, it is not horrible. I thought it was going to be way, 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 way worse than it ended up being for me personally. I finished the game. If it was really bad, I wouldn't have finished it, right? It wouldn't even be on this list, but I did finish it, and I will say that, yes, the combat isn't the best. In fact, I was thinking quite a bit about Banisher's Ghost of New Eden when I was playing Unknown 9 Awakening, because it has that sort of, it's like, you know, third-person action adventure game, kind of like God of War, with the sort of fighting mechanics that are on display, with like sort of how the game weaves its way from gameplay to cutscene, then back up to gameplay. I mean, it's not as seamless as God of War, not at all. There's actually these really jarring, hard cuts that happen in these cutscenes where the game just dips to black, stays on a black screen for like 5 seconds, and then it goes to the next cutscene. It's not nearly as seamless. I'm just saying the type of game that it is, it's trying to emulate that style. It doesn't really pull it off. I think the most impressive thing for me was how quickly the game would boot up. From the main menu screen, as soon as you click load game, it boots you right into the game. There's like no wait time at all. So that was pretty cool. In terms of the visuals, this game looks pretty bad. I'm not going to trash talk the visuals. I mean, it was a smaller team. You know, they didn't have like a huge budget. Smaller team. I think it was a fairly new studio, so they were kind of like dipping their toes into building these types of games in the first place. So I'm not going to sit here and rag on the developers, because they did a good enough job, I think, with what they had, right? But it's unfortunate, because there are things like frame rate issues constantly pop in for textures, voice sync issues. There is one bug that I kept seeing where if you changed your game settings to, I believe, prioritize frame rate, there were certain objects that would animate at a lower frame rate. So like if the game was running at like maybe 45 to 60 in that range, you'd have certain objects in the environment animating at like 30 frames or like 15. It was super noticeable and very weird, and it kept happening. Mainly for like these pillars that would sort of act as generators in the game. They would just like, I don't know, the frame rate was completely like just a big miss. And I think the biggest issue for me with this game was just the main character, Haruna, is not likable. And they try to like give more clarity to this character, and by the end you're like, oh, she's grown, blah, blah. And I'm like, she hasn't really grown. I still don't like her. In fact, I liked the supporting cast of characters, mainly Luther. I think Luther's the only likable character. Luther, and then the guy who tends the bar. That guy was pretty cool. But like everybody else, I was like, they're fine. They're totally fine. So overall, it's a skip. I don't really want to spend too much more time on Unknown 9 Awakening, but I am happy that I played it, because now I have an opinion on the game. I wasn't just ragging on the game to rag on it like a lot of people online were. But overall, yeah, it's just not worth your time. So skip it. Now, next year, I'm very happy to have this one on the list. This is Granblue Fantasy Relink. This one's going to go into very good. Now, if you haven't seen my other videos recently, one of my viewers had recommended that I check out this game. I bought it recently when it went on sale and added it to my PlayStation 5 games collection. And I finally had the chance to play the game. It is so good. It is a lot of fun. I really like Granblue Fantasy Relink. So thank you so much, man, for recommending this game, because I had a great time with it. I'm actually still playing this game on and off right now. I'm taking a break from Granblue to play other games and go through my backlog, but I am periodically jumping back into the game to do some online quests, so kind of mixing it up here. The reason it's not in must play for me, though, I'll be real, is it's the story. I don't really, I did a lot of research actually before I started playing this game, because after I beat the first chapter of the game, I was like, okay, there's clearly some setup here that I'm missing. I'm kind of missing some context here for characters and like why they're part of this mission. So I watched a YouTube video that kind of detailed everything about Granblue Fantasy up until Relink, and that helped quite a bit. But even after knowing the things that I knew, I still kind of found myself going in and out of the story. Now, I'm not saying that the story is bad. I'm just saying that I think the overall narrative didn't really pull me in. But the best part about this story is how well paced it is. The game just moves. Chapter to chapter, you're constantly engaging in fights, and you have these really awesome boss fights at the end of each chapter. And so there's a ton to do in the main game, and I think that the biggest part of like why I like the game so much is because of how well paced the story missions were. Not necessarily that the narrative, connecting those chapters was so compelling. I just think that it was paced in such a way that I was making great progress and going through the game at like a good speed and constantly having some sort of challenge to overcome. So that's kind of how I feel about Granblue Fantasy. It is really good. It is really, really good. I totally think you should check it out. And honestly, I'm waiting for, any sort of update on Granblue. If there's like another mainline game that comes out in the same vein as Relink, I will 100% be there day one to try it out, because it was a lot of fun. Okay, so next up here, I've got Crow Country. Boom, this is gonna go right into must play. This, again, similar sort of vein to Fear the Spotlight. It harkens back to these old school horror survival games. Crow Country, in my opinion, has even better puzzles to it. And personally, I like the story more than I did Fear the Spotlight. Not to say that Fear the Spotlight story was garbage, but I just liked the overall setup of Crow Country. There's also quite a bit of humor to the game too. It's surprisingly funny for me, or I found it funny at least. And again, the puzzles tie back into the central location, the story, and everything that you kind of experience in the game ties back to some sort of a puzzle or mechanic in a meaningful way. I played this game twice just to get the Platinum Trophy, and I will say 100%, please check it out. Please check out Crow Country. It is very, very good. I don't really want to spend too much more time on it, but it is one of those games, again, that's done by a small development team. So kudos to the, I think, 2 or 3 developers that worked on Crow Country. Totally nailed it. Can't wait to see what you'll both do next. Okay, I think this is the final thing here. Yeah, Rise of the Ronin is our final game here. This was the other, one of the other games that I played and finished so far in 2025. This one is pretty tricky, I'm not gonna lie. This one is teetering between very good and good. I know that this doesn't really matter as much, but I'm going to rearrange some of this stuff. Okay, so I did some basic rearranging here. Rise of the Ronin for me is at the very, very top of the good tier. It is basically right below very good. It's interchangeable for me, to be honest. Rise of the Ronin was far, far better than I expected. There were a lot of reviewers and gaming journalists, or gaming outlets, I should say, that kind of dogged on this game, that really did not like it. And I don't understand, I mean, aside from the visuals, because I seem like a lot of people just focused on how visually it looked like a PlayStation 3 game, which I don't really care, guys. If the game is compelling to play, or if it's fun to play, it has a decent story, I will play it. So I don't really know why a lot of these outlets were just like, hey, it looks bad, so it's a bad game. I think it's a good game, but is a very overstuffed game. And what do I mean by that? I just mean that there are far too many mechanics and systems that are stuffed into this game that kind of make the game lose focus a little bit, if that makes sense. I specifically have tried not to play open world games because I do think that there is far too much jank, or not jank, but just stuff jammed into these games nowadays, where I'm like, I just want to experience the story and give me like a nice lived-in world that is somewhat dynamic, and I'll be happy with that. But no, most of these developers and studios are like, put as much stuff in this game as possible, and if you're someone like me that fixates on doing every little thing, it's not fun. I don't think it's fun. But the real issue for me is this game is constantly throwing different mechanics and systems for you to onboard and learn how to use. And instead of just having maybe like 5 concrete systems that like you just hone on, kind of figuring out and getting better at, the game is like, oh, remember those 5 other things we kind of gave you tutorial blips about? Here's 10 more other things now you gotta incorporate into your revolving, memory of this is how the game functions and these are how these mechanics. I just think for me, if they tightened the experience a little bit, again, gave you like 5 or 6 core systems to think about and incorporate into like, how you play the game, it would have been a bit more fun. But like, there's just a lot here that honestly negatively I think takes away from the game. At least it did for me. That's just my opinion. The other issue that I have with this game though is, for me, I just found the story kind of all over the place. There were some really great sections in the first part of the game that I liked quite a bit. Second part kind of lost me a little bit, but then the last part of the game comes back around and I think is a very solid conclusion. So it was a bit more inconsistent for me when it comes to the main story beats. I'll be real, I was a bit confused early on to start. I didn't really weigh too much of the shogunate versus non-shogunate options, because there's like 2 different factions. You kind of prioritize choosing one faction over the other for certain missions. I didn't really place too much value in that stuff because I didn't really know what what ultimately was going to be the driving force for doing that early on. I admittedly looked up a few things online and was like, what is the optimal route for this game? Just because I didn't think the game laid out that stuff clearly enough to where like I should be choosing things for this specific reason versus the other. But again, maybe it's just because I missed something, right? That's just me. Story kind of hit or miss. And I think, again, there's a lot of systems in the game, and some of them are very cool, but others I'm like, you could have probably stripped this out and just made a tighter experience that focused maybe more so on performance optimizations and like, I don't know. It could have been tightened up is what I'm trying to say. But here's the thing. I would still recommend Rise of the Ronin. I don't think it's a horrible game. Yeah, visually it's not the best, and the story was kind of hit or miss at times for me. And again, I think it's a little bit overstuffed for its own good. It could have definitely reined things in a little bit more to make the game a bit more focused and fun. But I would still say it's a good time. I picked up the game for $30, and I think at that price point, it's absolutely worth you guys checking out. But yeah, I would say do some more research if you have an interest. Maybe check it out. Don't just discredit this game though because it looks bad or whatever. There is some fun to be had with it, and I do believe that it is a good time. Like I had a good time with it. I would recommend my friends to check this one out. I'd recommend all of you to check it out. So Rise of the Ronin, yeah, I think at the very top of the good tier is where I'm going to stick it for right now. Alrighty guys, so this is the final list here. This is the ranking of all of the games that I have played and finished in 2025 so far. Overall, I'm just happy that I've been able to play more games this year. I feel like now that I've made it my goal to not just platinum every single game in my collection, it's freed me up to play more games. And so yeah, I mean, we're only halfway through the year, but I'm hoping that I can maybe achieve the same amount of games played for June to December. That would be pretty sick. But that's just a pipe dream. But overall, yeah. What did you guys think of this tier list? Do you agree, disagree with where things ended up on this list? Let me know in the comments below. What have been some of your favorite games that you've played and finished so far this year? Leave a comment down below. And thank you guys for sticking around till the very end. I will see you all on the next video.